Hey.
Oh
And
my
this parak deals with the four Nedarim that the Chachamim were matir. Four Nedarim that are not quite effective, meaning in terms of prohibiting something. And we've already discussed two of them. Well, one of them, Nidrei Ziruzim. Our Mishnah yesterday talked about the second one, Nidrei Havai. You make a neder that is outrageous, is how I'm going to translate Havai, right? Something which is clearly crazy. So now there's a couple different ways to do that. So one is you can say, I prohibit food on me if I didn't see 1 million people, which we think is outrageous. No one can see 1 million people. And the second is if you say, if I didn't see a snake, which we think means a very large snake. We'll discuss today what it means, but something incomprehensible. You know, I didn't see a whale with 2 tails, I don't know, or something crazy. So that's what we started talking about yesterday. The Mishnah was then, the Gemara said that the Shvuot are similar, and we came out with the case that a person made a Shvu'ah that a person said, I'm going to prohibit all the fruits in the world to me by a Shvu'ah if I didn't see, hundreds of thousands of people, which seems to be a guzma. So asked Ravina to Ravashi, now that's what we're up to, 2 lines on the bottom of Chavdal on the bed. Amar le Ravina le Ravashi, why is that so ridiculous? Why is it so impossible for a person to say, I saw 1 million people? The Dilma, of course, nowadays it wouldn't be possible at all, right? But when you go to the World Cup.
There had been gatherings of 1 million people.
Right. But I use millions of exaggeration here too, because it says Olei Mitzrayim, which I guess is 600,000.
There had been gatherings of 600,000 people. Not that many, but there have been.
Maybe, says Ravina Travashi, Dilma, Hi Gavra Kina de Shumshamani Chaza. This guy saw a nest of ants, right? Or hornets, it could be anything. We usually translate as ants. But he saw a nest of ants. And as we always do, of course, he announced that these ants himself, these ants are what I mean when I say Olei Mitzrayim. So when you made your shvuah, a shvuah that I saw 1 million ants, right? You don't say ants, yeah, 1 million people like came out of Mitzrayim. What you mean is 1 million ants, which I guess is conceivable. Certainly I don't know about 1 million, but it's really conceivable to have many, many, many of this organism. So how do we know that we should take you literally at what you say? Maybe your internal interpretation of this is something very different. Maybe what you mean is something that's plausible. The shaper mishtava, and therefore your shvuah is actually true. How do we know to interpret it that way? Amar lei, so he said in the top of Chaf Hei Amud Aleph, so Ravashi said back to Ravina, a very important principle. The ki mishtava adaita didan mishtava. When a person makes a shvuah, it's based on common usage, on the public usage, or the Rabbanan's usage. It's not clear which one. But something not your own. It's not like you can be in your mind and be like, for today, I'm calling red purple, right? And then swear that it was purple, right? Or whatever. And that you reinterpret it. You have to go based on the dot of those you are swearing to. And obviously, most people don't call ants Olei Mitzrayim.
Nobody does.
Right.
Well, we have one person in the world.
Right? We are not thinking about ants, and therefore the shvuah clearly does not mean that. The shvuah is clearly what's called a shvuah havai, a false shvuah, an exaggerated shvuah, and it has no impact. So the person says, I will not eat any potatoes if I didn't see 1 million people. Right? You didn't see 1 million people, but it's such an exaggeration, such a far-fetched thing that we don't take it at face value, and you are not prohibited according to this interpretation. Now, ask the Gemara, is it true? Is it true about that? Is it true that a person can't swear on his own interpretation of reality? But Tanya, we have the following bright. Right, that says in Masechet Shavuot, that Kishahin Mashpienoto, remember the Masechet Shavuot, we talk about the main concept of Shvuah. So one of the Shvuot that we say is Midoraita is a Shvuah on Modeh B'Miksa, right? A person who, and we learn this from Sukkim, we're going to learn in Bava Kama, right? But a person who, Bava Mitzia, a person who borrows $1,000 and says, I admit I borrowed $1,000, but I paid you back 500. So in that case, the fact that you admitted part of it, introduces what we say is biblical, but a requirement to make a shvuah on the remainder you make a shvuah on the whole thing, right? Because you admitted that you still owe 500, so you have to swear that you already paid back the other 500, or you have to pay if you don't swear. So it says the Braita in Shavuot, how do we do it? What's the mechanics? Says the Braita, when you make him make a shvuah, Omrimlo, the Beit Din would say to the person, the guy, Haviyodea shelo al tnai shebelibcha anu mashpiin otcha. You should know that it's not what you have in your heart. You can't cross your fingers behind your back and say, I swear, no, whatever. You cannot, it's not conditional on what you're thinking in your heart. Ella al datenu al dat Beit Din. Your shvuah is based on our understanding, our Beit Din and Beit Din's understanding. So now, why do they have to give that preamble? Otherwise, what would you have thought? La fuke mai. What are you excluding? What are you teaching us? Lav la fuke must be that there would be people. The asigle iskundari. The Ram says iskundari are like little toothpicks, like little pieces of wood. Right? A guy will take some trivial thing that you have many of. The asiklan shmazuzeh and call them $100 bills. Right? He'll take his 1,000 toothpicks and say these are $100 bills, and hand over the toothpicks and say I gave you $1 million, right? Or whatever, $100,000, right? So he might take this iskanduri, asiklan shmazuzeh. He'll call them dollars, or call them, obviously zuzim. So you're afraid that he might hand over these things, and then he goes up and he swears, I swear I paid him $500. Now I didn't really pay him $500, right? I gave him 500 toothpicks, and I called each one $1, right? So we're afraid that a person is going to do that, and therefore we say to him, don't get any ideas, right? You can't have your own intention of what you mean. When you make this shvuah, it's based on what we mean. The fact that we have to then give that preamble, the fact that you have to say, oh, you're doing your shvuah, it has to be according to our dat. It must be that people, in fact, if you don't say it, are accused of doing this, of actually making a shvuah and having any intention. So maybe if I said, I'm not going to eat for the next 4 days, if I saw 100,000 Olei Mitzrayim, maybe I mean if I saw 100,000 mosquitoes, right? Maybe that's what I mean. So you see from here that it's not, unless you make a condition, which of course you can say, but until you make this condition, maybe a person is mishtaba adata denafshe, a person has their own internal interpretation of their shvuah. That's not true. That's not the case that you're trying to exclude. What we're trying to exclude is a case where you literally paid the money, but you paid the money with subterfuge, without him knowing you paid the money. La fuke mikanya de Rava, like a case of the kanya, which literally means the staff, I guess, of Rava. Dahu Gavra, there was a famous case, you can see why this was famous. Dahavi masik bechavre zuzi, right? A person borrowed 100 zuz from his friend. Ata the kamei de Rava, and they came to Rava and said, look, this guy borrowed 100 zuz from me. And Amalei Lilova, Rava said to Lilova, Zil parale, you got to go pay him back. Amalei Lilova said, what are you talking about? Paratich, I paid him back already. Okay, now it has to be a case where it was more than a mix-up, because otherwise there wouldn't be a shvuah, right? Because if you deny everything, remember, you don't make a shvuah. But let's say it was a case where more than a mix-up, right? So he said, I paid him back. Amarei le Rava in Cain, Zil Shtavale de Parate. So Rava said to him, okay, if you think you paid him back $50 of the 100, go swear that you paid back the 50, and you don't have to pay it. So Azal, so what this guy did was, he hadn't paid it, right? But what he did was, he aiti kanya, he brought a little, means a reed, but he brought a cane. The Yahav Zuzi Begave, he put $50 inside the cane. The Havi Mistamech Ba'azal, he's walking on his cane, he's hobbling along. The Ati Aleh Lebeidina, he comes to court. Amrle the Malva, so he gets up there and he says to the plaintiff, the Malva, can you hold my cane for a second? Nakir Haikanya Biadecha, right? Hold this for a second. So obviously he's handing him $50 hidden in there. So the Malva is now holding the $50, and then Nasav Sefer Torah. So now they do it. They bring the Sefer Torah. He swears that he paid. Now the Quran takes out the word depare because he didn't pay him back, right? He handed him. So that he gave him the Yahivle, Koma Dahavle. He says, okay, I swear that I gave you the $50, which he did, right? So this is a case, now I'll get to the end of the case in a second because it didn't end there. But this is the kind of case where we have to have this preamble that when you swear, it can't mean tricks like this, where you hid the money in his shoe and you swear that you gave him the money. It has to be literally what we're trying to say, which is you paid back your loan. And that's why we need to do that, because otherwise this person really did pay it back, but he did it in a tricky way. What happened in this story? Sorry?
Can't it be both?
It could be. We're arguing now that it doesn't exist.
Rather than the other case. Can't it be both? Any case, I mean, it has to be.
Rav Ashi made an assertion. Rav Ashi said it's not true. Rav Ashi's top line of the page, right, was a ki mishtaba adaita didan mishtaba. When a person makes a shua, it's based on common usage. So we're asking from here to prove that that's not the case, because if you have to say to someone, oh, by the way, your shua is common usage.
Common sense, right? I mean,
common sense, right? So
include both of these
from here,
because then it could include both of these cases, because nobody thinks that you paid them back just by kind of like this kind of thing.
Yeah, but you're literally did it. I mean, nothing you said. So we're saying you can't reinterpret it to say I gave him 50 grapes, but I'm calling grapes dollars, so I swear I gave him $50.
No, I get it. Yeah.
Right, that's what you can't do, but you can give us. Now let's do the end of the story because I left the cliffhanger here. Hahu malve ragaz. Now this lender got so furious because he was like, look, I trusted the system. I lent you $100. I never thought you would swear, that you didn't. So he got so angry. The Tavra Lukanya, he whacked him up. It doesn't even hit him on the head, but he broke the cane that he was holding for him. And all the money fell out. The money fell out on the ground. It turned out, the kushta ishtaba. And in fact, he was swearing the truth because he had handed over the $50, even though he was going to take it back at the end of the day, right? So that's why perhaps the court adds this preamble that when you swear, it's not, did you get it on technicality? It's the intention of did you pay back the loan? So you can't prove anything from there about adaita dinafshi. Doesn't matter, but still, I have another proof. Kati, still, I have another indication that in fact you're wrong. Lo avid in mishtaba adaita dinafshi. Is it true that a person doesn't swear according to their own internal understanding? But Tanya, what about the following Braita? Braita says, it's also a Gemara in Shavuot, exact same Gemara, though with many changes, as the Masoret Shas points out. But Tanya, we learn in a Braita, V'chein matzinu b'Moshe Rabbeinu. We see about Moshe Rabbeinu, Kishehishpia et Yisrael ba'arvot Moav. Right, when Moshe made Bnei Yisrael, he basically had a treaty with them in Arvot Moav. He said, I am making, essentially swore that they're going to keep the Torah. Right, so Moshe said to them that lo itchem levatchem enochi asat Allah zot v'tabrit hazot. Right, the whole pasuk. It's not just with you that I'm making this treaty and this Allah, this curse, your whole generations. So says the Braita, when Moshe was mashpiat Yisrael b'arvot Moav, Amarlem, he said to him, listen, Havi Yodim, you should know, shelo al datchem ani mashpiatchem. I'm not swearing to you according to the way you understand the Torah. Ela al dati v'al dat hamakom. It's based on me, the way I taught it, and the way God taught it. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, Lo itchem levadchem anochi asa, right? It's not with you alone. And we understand that there's actually an extra language there, right? We think, later we learn et asher yeshnu po hayom, et asher einenu po hayom, which includes even people who are not standing here today, right? Which is how we usually understand it. That Moshe was including future generations, but it specifically says those who are here and those who are not here. When it says lo itchem levadchem, what does it mean? So we are understanding that Moshe is saying to them, look, the way you have to observe the Torah, which is a shua, is based on the way I taught it, not the way you interpret it, the way you understand it. So what Amarlu Moshe Yisrael? What did Moshe say to Yisrael? Lav hachik Amarlu. He's saying to them, Dilma aviditon mili, right? Maybe you will do something wrong, okay? The Bach has avrita mili, but similar idea. And you'll say, al datenu, that you're doing it because this is how you call the Torah. So Rashi, the Quran, gives the example, right? You're going to worship Avodah Zarah, but you're going to say, this is what we call a God. So we didn't actually violate anything in Torah, even though obviously you are, because it says you can only worship Hashem. We're calling this Avodah Zarah Hashem. So therefore, Mishum Hachi Amar Lahu Al Dati. Therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu says to them, it has to be based on my dot. Now, Lafuke Mai, right? What's the case that they're going to do something that if Moshe didn't say to them, it has to be according to my dot, it wouldn't be a problem. Lav Lafuki, this case, the Siku Shmal Avodat Kochavim Eloha. They took their idol, unfortunately, and they called it God. And then they said, basically, we're worshiping God, right? We're not being going Avodah Zarah, because the name of our Avodah Zarah is Eloha. So what you see here is Michlal de Avid Inish to Mishtabah Daita Denavshin. You see that when a person says, look, I'm not going to worship a foreign God, but I'm going to worship my Avodah Zarah and call God. So you see that, even though obviously it's not the understood usage, that's what a person means. So you see from here that Moshe has to add a layer of warning because of that possibility. Well, that's not really a proof, because in fact, Avodat Kochavim is called God, right? It says, B'chol Elohei Mitzrayim, it says Shvatim. God says, all the gods of Egypt. So clearly they're using the word Eloha to refer to Avodah Zarah. It doesn't mean that they're Hashem, of course, but it means that they are also called Eloha, right? It says, well, I still don't get it. Why didn't Moshe just say, this is an interesting aside, but V'lishba Yaton, the Mitkaimtun Mitzvot. Why didn't Moshe just say to them, look, forget about how you understand the Shvuah. Why don't you make a Shvuah that you're going to keep mitzvot, right? And if you say you're going to keep mitzvot, then there's no other way to understand it. Mitzvot are what the Torah says. Says, well, it's not proof, because mashma mitzvot hamelach. If you just say we're going to keep the commandments might mean the American laws, right? It might mean, it doesn't necessarily mean the Torah laws. It doesn't necessarily mean, it could be mitzvot hamelach, whatever the king decrees. So therefore, okay, well, maybe Moshe should have said to them, the shpayaton, the kamiton, kol mitzvot, right? Why didn't Moshe say to them, I want you to swear that you're going to observe all the mitzvot, which would imply laws of the Torah and laws of whatever country you're part of? Says, well, not necessarily, because kol mitzvot could be mashma mitzvot tzitzit. You might understand, they might claim that only means we're going to keep the mitzvah of tzitzit. Why? The Amar Mar, as we've heard that we learned this in Menachot, Shkulam mitzvah tzitzit keneged kol mitzvot shel Torah. So tzitzit could be understood as being all the mitzvot. So if Moshe had just said to them, I want you to swear that you're going to keep all the mitzvot, it might have just meant mitzvah of tzitzit. Torah. So why didn't Moshe say to them, I want you to swear that you're going to keep the Torah? Well, that is mashma Torah achat. There's a couple of different ways to understand this. Right? The easiest way, of course, is that one Torah is Torah Shabbal Peh or Torah Shebichtav, right? Though of course there would be other ways you can understand this, but that it might imply only one Torah. Says the Gemara, okay, so Lishba Yaton L'Kaimiton Torot. So why didn't he say that we're going to swear that you're going to keep all the Torot? Oh, that Torot implies not necessarily all the written Torah and the oral Torah. That could be mashma Torat Mincha, or Torat Chatat, Torat Asham. Remember, the Torah always says Zot Torat Asham, Zot Torat Chatat. So maybe that's all it refers to. Okay, Lishva Yaton, the Kamitan Torot Umitzvot, right? Say, I want you to swear, B'nai Yisrael, that you're going to keep the Torah and mitzvot. Again, that doesn't prove it. Meaning it doesn't make them responsible for all the mitzvot, because Torot is mashma, Torat Mincha, Torat, etc. And mitzvot is mashma, mitzvot hamelach. Okay, you know what? This is what he should say to them. Lishva Yaton, let Moshe have the Bnei Yisrael swear, the Mekaimitun Torah Kula. Say that, not Kol Torah, but Torah, the entire Torah. Well, that's still, you might have misunderstood that, because Torah Kula could have been mashma only Avodat Kochavim. The Tanya, as we've also learned many times, Chamura Avodat Kochavim, Shekola Kofer Ba Kilo Modeh, but Torah Kula. Avodat Kochavim is considered to be equivalent to the entire Torah. So again, the language would not have been specific to all mitzvot. Okay, finally, says, well, I got it. We're at the first wide line. Lishvayaton, let Moshe cause them to swear. The mekaimiton avodat kochavim v'torah kula. Moshe should say, we're going to keep avodah zarah, not worshiping avodah zarah, and the whole Torah. So you can't think the whole Torah means avodah zarah. Inami, or you know what? He could have just said the following: Sheish miot v'shlosh esrei mitzvot. Right? Why did Moshe Rabbeinu say to them, I want you to swear that you're going to keep 613 mitzvot, right? That's how you count the mitzvot, of course. Says Gemara, you're right. All of this would have been possible. Ela Moshe Rabbeinu milta d'lo tricha naka. What he did was much simpler, right? What Moshe just said was basically that not only lo itchem levatchem, ela, and everyone. Meaning Moshe had to accomplish clarifying that I want Bnei Israel to swear that they're going to observe the Torah exactly the way that Moshe taught it and Hashem taught it, right? So rather than say, I want you to keep it exactly 613 without any deviations, without et cetera, Moshe just said, I want to add the point that it's not you who determine the Shvuah, it's me and God, and therefore you have to keep the Torah according to the way I and God taught it. And so that's what we learn from this whole story.
I find this very powerful because, especially nowadays when people say things that aren't true, but then they say, well, it's alternative facts or something, or, I think it's true, so therefore it is true or something. It shows like the limits of language and the connection between language and reality and stuff.
Right. No, I completely agree. I think that having to have this introduction that, it's one thing to say you should swear, but even swearing doesn't mean it, like you said, because people could mean different things with the same words, right? Or could hide.
Right. Right. They're lying, but they're so, but their truth is the truth, whatever, even if it's not objectively true.
Correct. Yeah, very interesting. The next case in the Mishnah, 3 lines from the top of the 3 lines down the wide lines, was if you say, in lower iti nachash kikorat beitabad, I say, I swear that I'll do whatever, I won't eat, or if I didn't see a snake that's as big as so we literally think korat beitabad means the beams that you use in the press, right? Some of us probably have been to these presses, right? Grapes or olives where you put the raw product down, you took these super heavy beams and put it on top, and then put stones on top, right? In order to weigh it down. So this person claims that they saw a snake that's as big as that beam. So that's clearly a lie. What do you mean? You never went to the Amazon? There was once a snake in the days of the Shvur Malka, and Ramalei Tleisar Arvata de Tivni, they gave it 13 bushels of hay. It swallowed them all up. It had no trouble with that. It was, we've seen these, the snakes that swallow the car, right? So
I just posted a link into the chat that you can click on.
Is that a snake that swallowed a car?
Well, it might not swallow a car, but it's quite a large snake.
Okay, fair. So look, it's uncommon. Most snakes are smaller, but
we're not talking about uncommon. We're talking about like there's got to be some level. Anything is, like when pigs fly or whatever like that. You know what I mean? Like there's always like one case out of a billion, whatever that could happen.
Pythons don't live in Israel, but they do live in India, and that's a Burmese python.
So just for the record, Hanan in Shavuot, when the word talks about this, it does use the case of pigs flying.
But it does, it doesn't matter if something like this does exist, and if it's possible. It's so unlikely that why should we credit it? Why should I don't.
The word Shavuot actually uses the example of Gamal Pareach Ba'avir.
Yeah, I know. I remember.
But that is impossible. And the more you said that there is.
I remember that Gemara. Yeah.
Right. It's impossible for a camel to fly.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's a difference. Even if so there's something that's impossible, but there's something that's possible, but so unlikely that why should we get bothered by it? Whether it's conceivable in it, if it's
because the person, that might be the whole point. The person might be like, I saw a snake as big as a car, and everyone comes to me and be like, you're lying. And like, I swear, I won't eat if I didn't see that.
All right. Well,
Actual article says that this kind of snake can eat people alive.
They're not allowed
An
to long.
anaconda can definitely eat a person.
We're
So-
going like up one notch here.
In any ways, so he saw this.
Not in the
This is
middle.
where it's possible. Answer Shmuel b'taruf, that when we say a snake as big as the Beit Habad, it does not mean as the size of the Beit Habad. It means that just like the Beit Habad is taruf, I saw a snake that's taruf. Now, what does the word taruf mean? So the Ran has a couple interpretations. He says the first one, the simpler one, seems to be that it has indentations, that it has like notches in it, and that snakes are smooth. Snakes don't have notches in them. I guess the Korah of the Beit Habad did, maybe because it has to crush the grapes, right? So you said you saw a snake that's like that. That's clearly not true. There's impossible. What are you talking about? Kulu nachshi mitruf tarfi, right? All snakes seem to have scale, like I don't know how to translate his spikaim, like holes in them, right? It says well, that's because I'm sorry.
Ridges.
Ridges, thank you. But a snake has ridges on its back, but not on its flat end, on the bottom, right? Snakes that slither on the ground, they're all flat on the bottom. So a gavot taruf kamina, on his belly, has ridges, right? So that's what it's referring to. It says, well, why don't you just say in the Mishnah, I saw a snake that had ridges. Why say I saw a snake that looks like the beam of the press? Litzni taruf. In fact, we're trying to teach you a second thing, which is that every Korah of the Beit Habad that you buy, if you go to, what's it called, Home Depot, and you say, I want to buy 5 Korot for my Beit Habad, and they sell you beams that are not ridges, you can send them back for a full refund, right? Because the Korot Beit Habad, Gabot Taruf, that the bottom of the beam of the Beit Habad has to have ridges. For business, that if a person is mocher korah beit habad l'chavero, I sell you a beam for your beit habad. Igavot taruf in ilolo. I can't deliver you a beam that doesn't have ridges on the bottom. So that's the Ran's one shot. The other shot the Ran has, which I think is also very fun, is that he quotes this from the Yerushalmi, that taruf means square. That you saw a square snake. Which the Gemara asks, what do you mean by how do you see a square snake? And then so then the question is, what do you mean when you say all snakes are square, right? So some understand it means that like the shape, I don't know, all like if you go up on a snake, essentially it's square, it's not really. What he's referring to is that the bottom is like that. But anyways, he has a whole different interpretation because he's not sure what exactly it means. But the ridges one is the one he says first. So that's the second case. That is a neder havai. The third case, which we now turn the page, the Mishnah on Daf Chav Hei Amud Bet, is nidrei shgagot. You make a neder by mistake. What's a neder by mistake? Right? Right, shagig is a mistake. For example, you say, I'm not going to eat, or I'm not going to do something imachalti, imshatiti. Right? You go and you say, I haven't eaten all day today. And someone says to you, what do you mean? You really didn't eat? I swear I won't eat for 5 days if I ate today. And niskar shachal v'shatan. Then you remember, oh my God, I had breakfast. Right? So you made a neder that you're not going to do something if you ate today. And it turns out you did, but you were mistaken. At the time you made the neder, you had really forgotten that you ate. Or what about in the future? You say, I make a neder shani ochel v'shani shoteh. Right? I make a neder that I'm not going to, remember shani always means she'eni, that I'm not going to eat or drink tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and you eat because you totally forgot your neder. In all those cases, you're not usher in the thing because it's a neder, it's b'shogeg. A neder requires you to be aware at the time you make the neder or you do the thing that this is part of your neder. If you forgot, it's not chal at all. Now, what if you say, Konem ishtina netli, I swear that I don't want my wife to get any hana from me, sheganvat kisi, because she stole my money, or she hikta et bini, and she hit my son, and then it turns out that she didn't. Then the neder is not chal, because you basically said it on condition that something happened. It turned out you were wrong about that thing, and therefore the neder is not chal. That's a nidrei shogagot. Or another example, Ra'a otan ochlim te'enim. This is a great example. We're going to discuss it a lot tomorrow. You see a bunch of people eating dates. Te'enim are dates, right? Dates. And maybe you don't want them to eat. They're your dates, let's say, right? You're walking home and there's a bunch of people standing in your yard eating your dates. You get very angry and you say, Harei aleichem korban. My dates should be prohibited to everybody. You can prohibit your own dates and other people, just to be clear, and yourself, right? But so you say, I want my dates to be cherem, to be usher to everyone. I'm so angry that everyone's stealing my dates. I want them to be prohibited. And then it turns out that the people standing under the tree eating your dates was your family. Nimsa aviv v'achiv, right? So that is neder shigagot, because you never put a period here. It's the easiest way to read it. That's a neder shigagot. You would have never made the neder if you knew it was your father or your brothers. You made the neder. You said it. You said, I want my dates to be prohibited for everyone to eat because of those people eating it, but you didn't know who they were. So now that you realize, you don't want to do it. What if? Now this is again how the Ran reads it. What if hayu imahen achirim? This is a very challenging case, right? There's 5 people under the tree eating the dates. You say, I want my dates to be prohibited to all those people. Turns out 2 of them are your brothers and the rest are strangers. And you don't want your neder to be chal on your brothers, but you want it to be chal on the other people, right? Potentially. So can your neder be chal in half, right? So Beit Shammai says, Hein mutarim, your brothers are mutar, mash imayam yasurim. But the other people are asur because you really wanted them to be asur, right? You always meant that. And Beit Hillel says, no, Ela ve'ela mutarim, your neder is not chal at all. Because what you said was everyone should be asur, and you didn't mean it for your family, and therefore the neder is not chal, and everyone is permitted. Now, Tana, the Breita said, the same thing would be true by a shvuah that was made by mistake. It says, how far do we take this? Kigon Rav Kahana Rav Asi. When there was a case where Rav Kahana Rav Asi walked out of Shir one day, and they couldn't remember, if Rav said that, I don't know, peanuts, you should do this or that. And Rav and Hadein Amar, one said, Shvu'ata dahachi amar Rav. I swear that this is what Rav said. And the other one said, Shvu'ata Hadein Amar Shvu'ata dahachi amar Rav. Right? Now, it turns out that obviously they swore because that's what they really thought. One of them was making a mistake. There's no question. But you would have thought, each one thought according to themselves that what they were saying was correct. And so even in that case, where of course it's one thing to make a mistake, it's another thing for a person to say you're wrong and to recognize that I might be wrong. But nonetheless, says the Ran, what we're adding here is that even though you recognize that someone else thinks you're wrong, that you should realize there's a possibility I'm wrong, right? And you're still making the shvuah, since you're totally convinced that what you're saying is correct. If it turns out that what you're saying is not correct, that's a shvuat shogeg, and it doesn't have an impact. So it's not. So that is our Mishnah. One more case. Let's read a little more. Ra'atan ochlin. You see people eating the dates. It's not. Now the Breita learns, the Mishnah learns, Tanatam, potchin b'shabbatot v'yomim tovim. A person can have a petach for a neder from Shabbos and Yom Tov. Let's say a person says, I'm not going to eat chicken for the next 2 weeks, right? And then it turns out, of course, we'll see the case later, that Shabbos or Yom Tov falls within the 2 weeks. Now, of course, you don't want to not eat chicken on Shabbos and Yom Tov because you have to have joy for your holiday. So it's a petach for a shvuah to say that, if I realized that I couldn't eat on Shabbos, I would have never made the shvuah. So then you're a neder, sorry. Then you're patur from keeping that neder. So now the question is, are you patur on Shabbos or are you patur from the entire neder, right? Which you can see is very similar to our Mishnah. So hayu omrim, people used to say, in the Mishnah, the rabbis used to say, otan hayamim mutarim, Shabbos and Yom Tov you're mutar, because you would have never made your neder for those days. But shar kol hayamim asurim, the rest of the days are asur, which sounds a lot like our Mishnah, right, where Beit Shammai said that your asur, the neder is chal on people eating the dates, but not on your family. But says the Mishnah later, ad shabbat Rabbi Akiva. Until Rabbi Akiva came, v'limed, and he taught, neder shutar muksato utar kulo. That if you have a neder that is mutar in part, the whole thing is mutar. So if I made a neder to prohibit myself from eating for 2 weeks, but 5 of those days end up being mutar, the neder is not chal whatsoever. And the same thing would be true in our Mishnah according to Beit Hillel, right? If you made a neder that all those people should not be able to eat my dates, but it turned out some of them are okay because they're my family, then everybody's okay. The neder has no effect. You can make a new neder if you want, but the neder has no effect, and that is why you're permitted. Of course, Beit Shammai would argue, but according to Beit Hillel, that's why you're permitted.
So according to Beit Hillel, you could not make a neder that you won't eat meat for a month.
Well, so again, we'll see the case later because it's potential that if you say, I know it's Shabbos, I know it's that, it would be okay.
No, you just said you didn't, obviously you know Shabbos is every 7 days, but you didn't think about that. You
Correct.
just said, I'm not gonna eat meat for 30 days. Boom, okay? Neder.
Right.
That doesn't count because your practice is to eat meat on Shabbat, so that's it.
So that's the case. Well, that's exactly the case later. So where a person says, I'm not going to drink wine for a year.
Right, okay.
So the Gemara says, Mishnah says later, you can be poteach that neder by saying, wait, I didn't realize, I didn't think about the impact it's going to have on my Shabbos.
Is that different than poteach on the neder, or it's not chal at all?
Yeah, that is different, right? So not chal at all would be a case where our Mishnah basically, Kagot, there it's a petach, right? Where you say,
out of it.
Had I realized this, I wouldn't have made it. Had I thought about this, I wouldn't have made it.
That
It is conceivable that someone would have made it, right?
Right.
Same thing as like the guy who actually makes a neder that he's not going to be eating matzah for a whole year. And he didn't think that Pesach is going to be in there and he has a chiyuv to eat matzah during that time.
So that's right. So neder, you still have to have a petach. Remember, we had this case before. Shavua is not chal. Remember, you can't make a shua to prohibit yourself from eating matzah, right? Because shua is not chal, remember, on a mitzvah. But yes, by neder, you would have a petach for that reason. So I think we should stop here because the next lines go for a long time, even though it's not so late. Can we do 7:30 p.m. tomorrow, Miriam? Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Smile. Okay, Chanam, we're going to try to remind you somehow, but
I
7:30 p.m.
I just put it in. It's
on Zoom. We will pick it up from 5 lines from the bottom, okay?
Shakor, thank you.
Shavua tov, everyone.
Shabbat tov.
Tov.
But